Hi friends, welcome back. In this video we can see how to migrate or refresh entire Couchbase cluster data from one cluster to another cluster. So as you see, this is one cluster with name my cluster. It has 3 buckets. I want to copy the data from my cluster to a new cluster where we don't have any buckets. For that I will be using cbbackupmgr. You can refer the documentation for the list of options provided by cbbackupmgr backup utility. The prerequisite is you have to create an archive directory along with a repo. These are the parameters we can pass to this cbbackupmgr backup command, and we can create the archive and config using cbbackupmgr config. So let me connect to the GCP VMs from PuTTY. I'm taking one IP. You can take any of the instance node IP that is part of the cluster. As you see on my screen, I have connected to one of the cluster nodes. Internal IP address is 10.128.0.2. The public IP ending with 59.130. I have connected to this node. So I'm creating archive and repository with cbbackupmgr config command. You can see repository created successfully. Now I'm running the backup command. I can provide any node IP which is part of the cluster. Here I'm providing the IP ending with 0.2 and provide the credentials accordingly. Threads means the number of jobs, the parallel processes I can see, which will help us to complete this backup job quickly. This depends on the number of CPU cores. You cannot over allocate this. That will cause the server hang and may crash your node. As a recommendation, you can't go beyond more than half of your CPU cores. I'm running the backup command. Backup successfully completed. Now let's check archive and repo for the list of backups. You can see one backup available, which is full backup. You can also list the contents inside the archive and backup. You can see the size and repo name, and you can see the list of buckets here: rest bucket, rest-tmp, travel sample. Now I need to copy these files to any one of the nodes of the Couchbase target cluster. For the simplicity, I am tarring these files into single file. I'm creating the tar file in the temp directory. Tar file created now. You can see it is created in temp directory with the size of 342 MB, granting the privileges for the copying purpose. Now there are a couple of ways to copy this file to the target GCP VM. You can use WinSCP or other ways as well. For the simplicity, I want to copy this file to a GCP bucket. In GCP cloud storage, there are no buckets at the moment. I clicked on create bucket. The bucket name is Couchbase bucket, size 1 GB. Just going with default options. Now click on create. You can see the bucket is created. Take out this gsutil URL. Here is the command to copy to the GCP bucket from the source cluster to GCP bucket. gsutil cp, name of the file, and bucket address. I'm executing the command. As you see on my screen, I don't have the permission. Let me grant the permission. Permissions. Add the email ID. Bucket owner. Save. Now just retry the same command. You can see the file copy started and the operation completed. Now let's refresh the browser and see. You can see the backup.tar here. Now let me connect to any one of the target nodes. Connecting to 91.67 IP, which is whose private IP address is ending with 0.4, which is part of the cluster. Connecting to PuTTY. Now I have connected to the target machine. Now let me copy the backup.tar from the cloud bucket to the VM. So I'm running the command. You can see the file downloaded, granting the privileges. For the restore purpose also, we need to create a repository. This is the command to create the archive restore and the repo named as repo2. Right now if you see, there is no archive directory named as restore. Once we execute this command, it will be there. Same command, lsfnlrtm created a directory /restore, as well as inside that /restore it have created a repo2 as well. cd to restore first, then cd repo2. So whatever files I have copied, I need to copy this repo2 folder because I have used same archive and repo in my restore commands. Now I am switching to temp directory, untar this, untar completed. Let's go inside backup. we have taken backup with repo1, so it's created, the folder is there with repo1, switching inside it. There we have the required files. I'm copying this cp-pr p to preserve the privileges, and since it is a directory, I'm using r/restore repo2. You can also copy everything, I mean this directory and backup method or JSON as well, but because there is already one file in this repo, so it will say that. Or you can simply cp star. You will get a warning, backup method or JSON is already, so it's asking you want to overwrite. This is a metadata file which will be having some backup related information. Files are copied. Now let's go inside restore repo2. Starting it once. If you have excluded any buckets, it will be mentioned here. Likewise, same applies to other parameters. Now, before executing the actual restore commands, the bucket should be there in the cluster. Otherwise, it will throw an error, bucket does not exist. So when you are restoring entire cluster, you have to create the empty buckets first. So if you see my new cluster, it is not having any buckets. Let me execute the restore command. You can expect an error. The bucket does not exist. Error restored, bucket does not exist. Now I will create the buckets first. When you are creating the bucket, make sure you create them with the same configuration to avoid any unwanted issues. So a bucket name is test. I'm copying it. Click on edit for the settings and see. Created with 100 MB, no replicas. Conflict resolution is timestamp. Ejection mode is value. So create bucket similar to this. 100 MB, no replicas. Timestamp. Value only ejection method. I'm enabling flush. I have mimicked all the settings for this bucket from the source cluster. Click on add bucket. So the bucket is added. So follow the same thing for the rest of the buckets as well. Now click on rest EMP. Click on edit. Rest EMP 100 MB. Bucket added. Now I will sample. 100 MB enabled replicas. Sequence number is the conflict resolution. Ejection method value only. So 3 buckets got added. Now let me run the same command. The restore started. The TMP completed. Travel sample restore is in progress, and you can also see the document in the target cluster. Yeah, it is completed. You can see restore completed successfully. So this is about entire cluster restore, or you can say migration. So there are few situations where you don't want to restore all the buckets, where you may want to restore only a specific bucket. That is possible. Let me flush the buckets. In the real world, you should not flush the buckets like this, because all the documents from the bucket will be deleted. For this, you must got an approval from the application team. Flush this bucket as well. Now all the buckets are having 0 documents, and this is the command to exclude one bucket. The same command, you just need to append this parameter, exclude buckets, and the list of buckets you want to exclude. So this is for excluding single bucket, and this is for excluding 2 buckets that are separated with a comma. Now let me execute this. Now you can see the restore happened on only these 2 buckets. If you check the UI, only REST and REST EMP are having documents. Travel sample still not having any document. That's what we expected. Now let me flush these 2 buckets again one more time. Now I want to restore only REST bucket. I don't want the restore to be happened on these 2 buckets, travel sample and REST EMP. So I excluded these 2 buckets. Now restore will happen only on REST bucket. As expected, it happened only on REST. We can validate the same from the UI as well. So that's it. See you in the next lecture.